Hi, this is Danny from Windows Korea. I was gonna talk about some weekly news uh, according to each important sectors. So I will draw you to my blog. So it's got some fairly recent news, so you can check it out here. I think we could start with very first news. We have some company here, so there's some noises, but please bear with me. So I'm gonna start with the March 5th, the distribution and e-commerce. And everybody probably know Korea is going through a very difficult time with the coronaviruses, or so-called the Wuhan virus. So markets are trembling. It's going down and down and like very crazy. But we could still talk about what's very basics, the fundamentals of the industry, and how is the coronavirus have affected each sectors. So okay, and I think the on the distribution and e-commerce sectors, I think coupon it probably is the key word here. So in the online businesses, I'm not sure the coupon is actually replacing the offline markets, but within the online market, the coupon doesn't have very big influences. Recently, there's been some few reports on the M&As of the domestic online companies. So Timon, eBay, companies like that is about to be acquired or merged by some other companies, large companies like Lotte and things like that. So the restructuring will start, and it will be very active in 2020. I think it's because making profit on an online platform is very hard because the coupons increased influences and diversification online business channels, and finally it's very hard to reach a profitable scale economy. So that's one news that I could come. And the other news is the casinos. Casinos are doing okay despite coronavirus. So from the day of the confirmed outbreaks of the coronavirus in January, and it's really starting to spread actively in mid-February. Domestic casino for foreigners have achieved a sharp YOY increases. So Paradise, GKL, those are main companies. They're actually doing so well. 28% growth and 16.2% growth in February. Oh, I'm sorry, in January. And then in February, there's 57% and 38% for casinos, Paradise, and GK. I'm not sure how it's going to play out in March because in March there is a lot of movement that actually the Chinese are not coming to Korea for the coronavirus. And I'm going to go to the bank sector. So stock price for banks has fallen way too far, according to the Hana Financial, the Mr. Choi, and he said the weak bank stock prices are not the common phenomenon in Korea, but still the stock price have fallen too far below, and below the level that he think is appropriate. The bank exposure to major damages industries such as LCC, low cost carriers, and travel, and movie theater are not significant, so they don't have much exposure in these areas. And cost defaults are likely to increase significantly this year because it takes a lot of time from the time when the small business get affected by the economic downturns. But then there is one thing is that we have to be aware of is the bank provision, because there could be a possibility of a bank adopting a more aggressive conservative provision. So those are things that you need to look at when you look at the banking business. And F&B, frozen food sales surges after coronavirus. This is obvious because definitely everybody's staying home and they're ordering food or buying a frozen food, right? So try not to go out too much. So according to eBest, Shim Jihan, frozen and processed food shopping click-through rose significantly after the Corona-19 breaks. I think this is very obvious. And Naver Data Lab Shopping Insight click volume. This is something that you, if you have time, you should look at this Naver data, because everybody kind of uses as a sort of like forward-looking, data for what's going to happen in the future. So has surged since this Corona-19 confirmed date. The amount of the clicks in frozen convenience versus processed foods leads the click volume of the entire food sector. So this is what is driving the food sectors, right? So there is a trend in kimchi sales, side dishes, and farm products as a whole. So you could look at the report here in Korean. So you could utilize this Google translations. You could look at that in English if you use Google Translation. So the petrochemical valuation are too low also, he said. Hana Financial also. I think what he's saying is that valuation is reaching the level of 2008-2009 when the financial crisis happened, and it's already surpassed the oil price plunges in 2014 because of shale revolution. For example, the Kumho Petrochemicals 12-month forward PVR is around 0.7. So I think a lot of the heavy kind of industries, the machineries and stuff, the shipbuildings are very low in terms of PVR. The machinery is probably around 0.7 or 8. Shipbuilding is way below, like 0.34, I think. So it does not surprise me, because nowadays petrochemical is hard business in Korea. It's kind of old business, Korea. Old business. I think this continually threatened by the Chinese players with their economic skills and low, at least lower than Korean labor cost. So there has been some improvement in fundamentals, like they've been restructuring and trying to bring up the efficiencies. But then, because China has invested massively in their capacity expansion, they have their sufficient ratio has gone up, and they're also participating in the world competitions, global competition. So that will bring down very very difficult situation here. I think the Middle East, like suppose like Aramco, they're also expanding the NCCs and ECC facilities. So that's something will add up to the petrochemical industry. Even then, that he believes that the PVR or the valuation is just way too low. So you could check it out, the Hana Financials. You could utilize this link here. Okay, next is the electricity bills in Korea. A lot of people complain that the electric bills are too low compared to that cost in the business sectors or industrial sectors. The consumer sectors are way too high in terms of the ratio. So I think the government has tried to minimize the increases in the price of electricity in Korea. But then they said in the last November, well, just giving you a little more details, because of the hot weather, sudden hot weather in Korea the year before, there was been like incredible amount of electricity have spent it. That caused a lot of households to had to pay a lot of electric bills, because there is what called the accumulated pricing system. If you go over a certain level of usage, you have to pay like double, something like that. So they had changed that a little bit, but then because of the changes, I think the KEPCO, the electric companies in Korea, is having a very difficult time in terms of making profits, and obviously the shareholders are not very happy about it. So the government has stepped in and they said that they were gonna see how the cost of the electricity will play out within the next 3 months, which was in November. So now time is advent. So analyst Jae-yoon says, Jason Yu said that the KEPCO reported coal production decrease in 2.4 TWh and hertz, and the LNG reported about 12.3. So the difference is coal and LNG costs about 28 billion won. About 28 won. So given the 1.3 trillion TWh of the total power generation, have decreased, that means the reduction has been covered by the LNG, and LNG is obviously more expensive than the coal and especially the nuclear power. So the estimated cost increased to about 70 billion won. So now the government has to look at and kind of have to decide whether it's gonna increase the electric utility ratio. So we'll see what happens. I think that Mr. Jason Yu, the analyst from the HANA, is expecting that to happen soon. So that means it's good news for KEPCO. So we could look at the report a little more details. Okay, so very very quick news on the construction sectors. The coronavirus must affect negatively in-house the construction sector in Korea, especially, and even globally. I think that there's gonna slow it down a little further. But in Korea, even it's getting harder because the face-to-face process is mandatory when it gets a permit to build a apartment, especially. So it's gonna slow it down because you cannot meet them. You cannot go out and have like meetings as often as before. So that's something we're gonna slow down the construction sectors. Okay, I think this will bring up better news for the Nongshim, which makes a lot of ramen, the instant noodle. So Nongshim's plant utilization rate has increased more than 30% than the usual level. At January, I think the movie the Parasite has contributed, because there was some scenes that, you know, eating a lot of the instant noodle related food. I think it's called the japaguri. So that's have sold a lot of japaguri to from Nongshim. And in February, obviously the coronavirus driven a lot of people stay home and eat a lot of instant noodles and frozen food and everything. So I think Hana is expecting the earnings surprise for Nongshim. Okay, you can look at the line here. Okay, you keep looking at the Hana, so bear with me. I think this is about the telecom sector. So telecom sector, the equipment stocks looks more attractive than the telecom stock itself. I think the existing user traffic is increasing due to the corona effects, because everybody's staying home, watching YouTube, listening to music and stuff. But the 5G subscriber growth seems to be slowing down, because even with the S20 launch, because obviously there's a sharp drop in the visitors to the dealer shops. So 5G subscribing will be detrimented by coronavirus. So what it is saying is, rather than the telecom sectors, you have to look at the equipment sectors, telecom equipments, because Samsung Electronics to supply 5G equipment to New Zealand, the largest carrier called Spark. They should benefit the Korea's small and medium network equipment makers. Okay, and the last is there has a report. The government has announced new regulations to finance product selling. Okay, and by Cum Securities. So now the finance companies must comply with 6 major sales regulation. I think this is the 6 major regulations. If you look at it, the conformances. So you have to sell considering the consumers or buyers, you know, how rich he is and what experience he has in the investment side. And also he has to notice that in light of the consumers' property situations, as a situation, and this product is not so appropriate or inappropriate, then has to tell them. So that's something that he has to do. It is called appropriateness. I also have to point out all the key elements of the product. So I'm going to talk about it later, but when consumer or buyer says, I didn't hear it, it is a seller that has to come up with the proof that he did. So the proof is on the seller side rather than the buyer side. Burden of proof is on seller side. And the provisions of the infringements of the consumer's rights by using superior status while selling products. That means you can sell like some kind of fund when you're loaning them. So you loan, I'm gonna loan this amount to you, but you have to buy this product. You cannot do that anymore. I think they weren't allowing before, but I think making it more difficult to do that from these regulations. Provisions: consumers are misleading products when selling products. So they should not. If they use like a fact that is not is groundless, or it has no objective basis, then it could be a problem. So, and also advertisements should not be exaggerated or being false. So selling it is going to be very tough. Burden of proof, obviously, I told you about that. Sales agents such as loan liquiders and insurance agents, the financial FBs and what do you call that, FAs or something like that. They are now under the provisions. Before they weren't, but they're now under the FSS provisions. And I think you could start a business that can consult people on a neutral basis. So you could be, you should be, there could be a consulting company that gives advice to consumers to not to buy or buy some products. So I guess they weren't allowing any of that kind of businesses before, but they are now doing it. The impact, obviously, the sales going to be bankrupt, things like that will be contracted. I think the impact is very uncertain at this point, because the important thing is that it is how is it the government is going to compensate the cost increases because of this by allowing them to increase the interest rates or selling cost, which that the US did. So US companies were allowed to compensate this cost by putting the cost into the prices, but we don't know that if the government is going to allow it or not. Yeah, this all happened because the lime, problems, phenomena. They were selling these products, so like a Ponzi scheme kind of product. So it is very important to realize that it is responsibility lies on the financial firms, because they were seeking for short-term profits. But at the same time, it is very difficult to have fair pricing on the financial products because of difficult regulations. So without really dealing with the regulation, just putting on the regulations, then the market's only going to bring down the profitability of the companies and making all this industry unable to go forward. If they want the industry to survive or become more alive, because I think in Korea, financial industry is very important. So the regulator has to think about how to promote the growth of the industry, at the same time constrained the regulations. So I know it is very hard to have the very what we call the balanced regulations, but it's something that they have to spend a lot of time and thinking on. So I think this is all for today, and I will go just for the stock market, what happened this week before I go away. So let me go to okay, I think you should use Chrome. You should use this. Neighbor. I'm just gonna show you what happened in our markets this week. KOSPI. Let's look at the KOSPI first. Okay. So I started with 2020 came up a little bit from 2000 after it's broken down to 1900 level because of Corona, and then it came back up a little bit up. Okay. So this week, except the last day on Friday, the market has gone up quite a bit. So it's almost reached the 2100, but then it went down pretty significant on Friday. So, and KOSPI, KOSDAQ, also I think they go very similar together. Let's see, yeah, it went up on Monday and then slowed down a little bit on Wednesday. Thursday again up. Wednesday kind of went back up. Thursday also went back up and then went down. Okay. I think it kind of followed the U.S. market. Let's just look at the U.S. market. Just the Dow Jones first. We probably know better than this, but the U.S. market also went up on Monday, down, up, down, down. So wasn't very happy markets in US. Also same here in Nasdaq. Went up, down, down. So basically end up below when it started. So I think the compared to American markets, Korean market did better, but I'm not sure how it's going to be like that forever because everything is so uncertain. Okay. All right. So this is all for today. I will see you again next week. I'm going to try to maintain the weekly news on regular basis. Try to come to my blog. If you have a little more questions, just leave the questionnaires on here. I'll try to help you as much as possible. Thank you very much. I'll see you again.